Welcome back to The Brave Front, a podcast with a single purpose, to talk about men's mental health. My name's Tim Bainan, and here's a sneak preview of what's coming up in this episode.
Like the last sort of bigger project I worked on was the John Legend's latest album, the soul superstar and TV personality that is John Legend. But what I have found myself doing, and what did happen when it really got bad, was the urge to self-harm or to stop the pain that's going on. I wanted to crawl out of my skin. The neurotypical world isn't fully set up for a neurodivergent mind. So with that in mind, I also know there's many musicians earlier on in their careers, or wherever they are in their careers, that are struggling.
As you've probably guessed, in each episode of The Brave Front, I'm going to be talking to someone who either has an inspirational story to share with us, or some invaluable insight into the things many of us struggle with. In this episode, I sat down with music producer Andrew Kingslow, who can count John Legend and B.B. King amongst his impressive client list. I wanted to find out about his neurodiversity and how a diagnosis of autism as an adult has helped him to shape a new perspective on his own mental health and to set about changing the music industry for the better. Now, apart from listening to a debatable mix of indie, rock and pop on my own Spotify playlists, I know very little about the music industry itself, and I don't have a musical bone in my body. In fact, a handful of tuneless piano lessons and a reluctant attempt with a trumpet aged 11 is about the full extent of my musical skill set. So, Andrew's ability to play countless instruments, turn his hand to different styles and genres, and to write music for some of the world's most familiar artists and movie soundtracks to boot is something I have the utmost admiration for. As is the fact that he has done so much and become so successful while battling personal demons and struggling to come to terms with why his vision of the world and the way it works is so different to everyone else's. Indeed, Andrew has recently launched a landmark survey to gather the thoughts and opinions of the autistic, ADHD and neurodivergent community within the music industry in order to gain a better understanding of the challenges and barriers they face. So it was an absolute pleasure to sit down with Andrew to talk about his personal challenges, his hopes for the future, and how his sister's guitar, aged 4, eventually led him to John Legend's front door. Andrew, welcome to The Brave Front. Thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate you taking some time out of your busy day to do so. Tell me, how are you, first off? How's things?
How am I? I am good. I am embracing the change that is autumn, which is something that I don't always do so well. But no, I'm good. But thank you for asking. And how are you, by the way?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. I feel I'm with you on the change of seasons. It's always a weird time. It's a
definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Where do we find you today? I'm sort of looking, got some artwork in the background. You told me just before we started recording where you are, but tell everyone else where you are today. I'm at one of London's famous music and media haunts, the Groucho Club. So I'm in Soho, holed up in Soho today. And yeah, indeed, there is some really crazy artwork, actually. I wish I could share it, but maybe I can take some pictures and send to you. Have you bumped into any celebs whilst you've been there yet? I've not had the misfortune or fortune, depending on the way you look at it. Yeah, I basically came straight into this hidden room, and I'm here with you now. So I'll do my celeb hunting later, hopefully. Nice. Well, that might come hunting for you. Listen, it's a Friday afternoon. Where would we normally find you on a Friday afternoon? What does a sort of an average Friday hold in store for you?
Honestly, it could find me anywhere. I spend a lot of time in my recording studio. I'm a music producer. But generally, my business is split between two things now. And, one of the things it's moved to is onto the sort of like mental health side of things as well, which is why we probably find each other talking to each other. But I have meetings regularly. So today you would normally find me in town or in a studio.
Excellent. And obviously, you've mentioned you're a music producer. You've made an incredible name for yourself over a long career. Obviously, I've done my research. I've looked at your website, looked at the details, everything. Tell us a little bit about your musical journey. And if I'm right in what I read, you started playing the guitar aged 4. Is that right? Is that where it all started?
It did all start when I was 4. It started when my sister, of all people, brought a guitar home from school, and I kind of looked at this thing and thought, what's all that about? There was something about the organized sound that you could get from it, and just the way it looked. And I just started sort of like messing around on it. I mean, so it's my intro. I taught myself nursery rhymes basically on the top 2 strings for the first part, but it definitely developed into something over time. Yeah, for sure. So I would say that I've been involved in music since the age of 4, and I still carry that forward now. It's followed many. It's taken me in many directions and followed many guises, had many guises, but yeah, definitely, music is the thing for me.
This is not the time to be modest. Tell me, tell me a little bit about some of those sort of bigger projects you worked on. I've seen some of the names, and what are you, what are you most proud of?
What am I most proud of? Do you know, actually? So first of all, I'll try and answer those in the right order. So in terms of the bigger names, I mean, a lot of what I've done has crossed such multiple genres. So from anyone from like the last sort of bigger project I worked on was the John Legend's latest album, the soul superstar and TV personality that is John Legend, and it's worked its way back from from Van Morrison. I went on tour and supporting BB King at times. So we're talking sort of heritage acts. I was with Funky Goes to Hollywood for a while. A lot of the 80s act, Nick Kershaw, but also moving into sort of like the modern side of things as well, modern pop culture as well. So I worked with a lot of the bigger labels kind of as a writer and a producer. And I can count people like Bill and Ted and Gin Gin as some of the bigger writers that I work with that have got cuts, huge cuts. I mean, Ryan Tedder's another guy that I've worked with, obviously. I say obviously. But, the big kind of producers, I work in the back room a lot of the time. So I support the artist as a producer and a writer. And then projects that I'm proud of, well, some of I've done a lot in the film and TV world as well. And actually, as I speak to you now, we're just closing in on starting work on a feature film that I'm exec producing as well as taking control of all the music for. I did a kids show called Rastamouse.
Oh my gosh, I remember Rastamouse. Yes,
yeah, people of a certain demographic and age will remember that. Either students, stoner students, that were around the kind of like 19 to 24 age range in 2011, or 3 to 7-year-olds around that time as well. And it's what's very interesting about this, which I'm quite excited, is that those 3 to 7-year-olds are now kind of, 13 to 17. So we've got a whole new audience to bring it to, and they have very fond memories of it. And also the students now have children, potentially, that are between 3 and 7. So we've got this whole new kind of audience, but it's going to be brilliant. So Rastamouse is something I was proud of, and I'm going to be proud again because we're bringing the feature film to the world. A lot of stuff that I've done for children's music, especially, I've kind of ended up being kind of a go-to for a lot of the companies, with Nickelodeon, Sky Kids, CBeebies, all of these. I've written a lot for kids, but I've written in a way that doesn't write down to kids. I just write music that kids and their parents will enjoy. So we've had multiple sort of nominations for awards and won quite a few awards as well in that realm. BAFTAs, etc. So yeah, I'm very proud of that. I have to say, to win a BAFTA or be nominated for a BAFTA is a very heartwarming, and it makes it all feel a little bit more worth it.
Yeah,
on those long, hard nights.
And I imagine so. Also, just bringing joy to children as well, because that is something. And it's a program my kids watched growing up, and yeah. So I know they enjoyed it, and it's just one of those. It's just happiness in a children's TV format, isn't it?
Absolutely, it really had a little life of its own, and it also moved outside of just children's TV because there was kind of, it was, do you know what it was? It was one of the first viral content, and at the time, people weren't searching for viral content openly on social media, whereas they do now. So It went viral. It trended on TikTok every day in the top, probably in the UK, for weeks. Every time a new episode came and it trended. But we didn't have the facilities, or how can I put it, the infrastructure in place to actually capitalize on that. A lot of what we were doing was reactive as opposed to proactive, managing press and things like that. It was quite a big noise at the time. So it'd be very different to see how that would work in the modern world. Because we do realise 10 years on, social media has taken on it's a beast. It's a beast.
It's a big topic in its own right. That's there's the positives and negatives of that, and obviously I'm sure as in terms of when you look into the mental health side of things, social media has a whole different dynamic to it as well, of course. But listen, tell me, you're living. I mean, you just talked through an incredible career in terms of what you've done and what you've worked on and who you've worked with. You kind of living the dream, really, in terms of finding. You've turned a hobby and a passion into a career, and that's something I think that everyone would love to do.
Yeah.
How is that? Have you ever sort of stopped to reflect on that in terms of you're getting paid for something that you just love doing, and that's ultimately what we would all love to be able to do.
I mean, I have to take note of the words that you just gave me there, really, because often we don't wake up and smell the coffee, so to speak. We're so caught in the melee and the survival aspects of the industry and coping with the changes, you don't often stop. But when you say that, yeah, I do something that I love. I'm very grateful that I can still do something that I love. And I'm also very grateful that I'm able to transition into other things to do with music that I'm also super interested in. I mean, talking to you now, doing the podcast, talking about the mental health issues that we face, all of these, I think when I really reflect, I've not spent enough time focusing on the positives that you bring up. And it's in our makeup to actually think about the things that have gone wrong rather than the things that have gone right. So actually, I thank you for saying that. I take it on board. And yes, I do feel very fortunate.
Exactly. I think you're right. It's a trap we all fall into sometimes, just trying to, sometimes we forget how lucky we are to be where we are and in that current situation, because you get blinkered by the things that trouble you sometimes, don't you? I think that's often the case.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You've obviously made a name for yourself in music, but you also created a new name for yourself, right? The Neuro Muso. Tell me a bit about the Neuro Muso and what it means, and just tell me a little bit more.
Okay. So, I mean, for some context, I started guitar when I picked the guitar up when I was 4. I mean, let's rewind. As it was, there's a noise that goes like that. That's the rewind noise I'm giving you. We're back to me being 4 now. There were other things going on around me in my life at the time, but music was that one thing that I could super focus on. And I started guitar, moved into piano. I then got accepted to a specialist music school where I received a scholarship and got really insane focused training in music that then led on to doing the full music education, because reading music, string arrangements, orchestral arrangements, composition, percussion, guitar. But I played so many different instruments. But at the time, all of this felt very natural to me. However, from an outside point of view, it's like there was what was considered, I guess, I'm just going to say in inverted commas, an extraordinary talent, because to me it's just the norm. The upshot of all of this is that usually, whoever your spirit, whether you're godly or whatever, what you're given in one side of your life is taken away from in another. It's God's balance, or the spiritual balance, or the balance of the universe. And so I started to struggle with what I now have learned were autistic meltdowns, autistic burnout. Everything that you associate with kind of like being what used to be called high functioning autism, but I just say on the ASD scale now, on the autistic spectrum. I was suffering from a very young age, and it really played into most of my life. It's built into relationships, it's built into work, it's built into finances, everything. Everything spent a long time spiraling out of control. I had a diagnosis um, November 2019, being autistic spectrum. So that put a huge. I have to say, by the way, that the diagnosis came from me no longer being able to cope mentally with the thoughts, the burnout, depression cycle, and the anxiety cycle, which I'm happy to talk about, especially on this forum. So I had a diagnosis. I went into autistic identity therapy that was supported through a company, a charity I now work with, actually, the London Autistic Charity Group, or London Autistic, yeah. And they supported me through this, and we were coming through the other side. It's not been easy, because actually, when you are diagnosed, I went through the stages of grief that people go through, because the life that I knew before, it was completely not what I thought it was. I saw everything through a different lens. So they've helped me come to terms with that. Helped me come to terms with what I feel, why I feel it, how to protect myself in certain situations, especially in the music industry. So the upshot of that, the long way round, is I now I've been working, and I'm kind of like doing work within the industry, the music industry, and lobbying the music industry as the Neuro Muso, to try and create a healthier and more understanding environment in which we can all work better together. Because there are definitely triggers for me in the music industry. It moves very quickly. It demands a lot of quick work. It's very anxiety inducing. There's always some stress. There's always a deadline somewhere. There's always something. So I think, that added to a lot of the issues that I had. Mm-hmm. And we're working with the industry, for the industry, and the neurodivergent community within the industry, try and make it a more safe space for us all, basically.
Fantastic. I mean, I'd like to talk to you more about that in terms of the neurodivergence across the music industry. It's not an industry I know very well, so I'm keen to find out more from your point of view in terms of what that's like and the work you're doing. But let's just take a step back in terms of your diagnosis 2019. So you're an adult. I don't know how old you were at that time.
Anywhere between 30 and 70.
Somewhere. You're an adult. No. So tell me what life was like before that point in terms of how did you, what were some of the issues and some of the challenges you were facing growing up, into as a child, as an adolescent, and growing into, as a man? How were those manifesting themselves in everyday life?
Okay, so there are key things that are associated with it, and it depends on where you are in your cycle of burnout and depression, because it is a cycle. First of all, I can think on a kind of an interactional and community level, is where as an autistic person, you tend to spend a lot of time being on the periphery or on the outside, because maybe people would know of this, but we tend to what's called mask a lot. So our emotional palette doesn't exist in the way that other people's does. So a lot of the time, when you're in a group situation, you're not able to read the room, you're not able to read the people around you. And so we tend to kind of complicate things and mask. So if you think of our computer program is a hell of a lot longer than anyone else's, and takes a hell of a lot more RAM or memory or resource to run, because we're thinking around things all the time. We're not thinking about feeling. We're thinking about what someone else might be feeling, that we can then potentially react around or react to. You can see already, me thinking about it gets very complicated. So that added to the burnout cycle, but also made it very difficult for me to be natural in group environments. And quite often you'd be referred to as eccentric, or the mad professor, all of these things, all names that have been given in my life. So there was, in a sense, a disconnect between me and my environment, or the environment, not my environment, the environment. That also I tended to gravitate towards hyper focus into my music as a result, and into production and music production. So whilst this was a blessing, it could also act as a curse, because it's once again pushing me more into a screen, which is kind of what a lot of people do now, by the way, more into a screen and away from human interaction and contact. So I spent more and more time working on my own, taking more and more work on, because this is my safe space, and therefore physically not fully being able to kind of accommodate all of that work as well. So again, the cycle starts again: overwork, burnout, anxiety, not wanting to be around people because of the anxiety, but the anxiety is always fed from me not being, it comes from me not being it. You see it, and here we go.
It's a chicken and egg situation, isn't it? Yeah.
Here's the spasm, and the spasm builds and builds and builds. And what I tended to find is, as I got older, without realizing it, these burnouts were getting closer and closer together, which makes perfect sense, because I think we get more tired, our brains aren't as malleable as they used to be. We just don't have that emotional strength to kind of carry these things. So it manifested in many ways, really, but the majority, I found myself also starting to disassociate. I don't know if you come across the term disassociate, but I didn't feel like I was living my own life for a long time, and I became the third person, or a character, a narrator of my own life rather than the person living it. All classic symptoms, but quite distressing when you start to, it's sometimes that disassociation is associated with schizophrenia as well, I believe. Not this is nothing. I've never been anywhere near that. But what I have found myself doing, and what did happen when it really got bad, was the urge to self-harm, or to stop the pain that's going on. I wanted to crawl out of my skin at times. Like, I couldn't be in my own body. There was a way to bring yourself back into the world. There's almost to hit yourself back into the world. These things really happened. And I'm very, very grateful that I got help when I did.
Yeah.
And that I was pointed in the right direction to help, because things were getting quite bad. So it was a spiral. It has been a spiral.
Yeah.
And now I know, and with people around me supporting me and the right tools, the idea is to manage that. And
it's difficult for somebody who isn't in that space to understand. And I can but you're explaining it very eloquently and in a way that I really appreciate. And I'm just trying to get a sense in terms of for you, that masking, I'm assuming, started at a young age and is something that you continued to do. And I'm assuming that just grew and grew. Did that become harder as you got older?
Yeah. I'm laughing. Yeah, it did. Look, when I was younger, the music, I'm from a very working class background in Manchester. And then I just got plucked out, scholarship, into a school where there were children who were from very wealthy background. It's a massive cross section. So already there's an identity loss from who am I as a kid. It's like, who the hell am I? So even from just a normal kind of emotional growing up as a child thing, point of view, I'm already a bit lost. The other thing that I also felt during my school time was we didn't really get an opportunity to be children, because it was a high performing school. You were expected to practice all the time, perform at a very high level, and also have very good grades in your academic. It was intense. So that development that happens through the age 12 to 17, where you do learn how to interact with your peers, and you do learn how to argue and how to debate and all of these things, it happened on a much more adult level. So we missed that out. This also had a knock-on effect. The masking thing, I need to come back to the point of the masking. I did start very early on masking. I did through my music. I masked. I used to actually, I found it very easy to be more emotional through music, playing Chopin, Bach, all the different composers. Playing this through piano was my way to emote. I'm just trying to think also that it happens on so many levels. Not knowing who you are causes you to mask, to fit in with everyone else and fit in with your environment. Again, a recognizable symptom of my autism. I'm gonna say it quite quickly. Imagine any relationship that you embark on. If you start from a point of masking, it's got to fall apart at some point, and that's when everything fell apart. You can't keep the energy up. Sometimes you just
you're
need to be
essentially pretending to be someone you're not. Essentially,
yeah, you're essentially quite often pretending to be the person that you think other people want you to be, rather than your very self. It always falls apart eventually.
Yeah,
and sometimes the cataclysmic effect. Other times it just sort of like
yeah. I must imagine it's a huge amount of pressure on you in those situations. So I can't imagine how hard and challenging that must be. Did there come a point heading towards that time when you were, you received your diagnosis, and you mentioned earlier that it was, as a result of reaching a point of anxiety and depression, which you got to, that led you to that. Was there a point in time where it reached a crescendo, if you like, in terms of how bad things had got for you?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's probably like with many people, lockdown exacerbated all the issues for everyone. There's a number of us. I was talking to my therapist the other day about this. I was, and lockdown actually provided solace for me as an autistic person once I'd transitioned from the shock, because at this point now you were very much in control, as in for a short period of time. Another thing is organization for me, the organization of my time, and I like my timetable to be organized. I like to do the same thing every day if possible. That's something that lockdown really provided us. It gifted me that for quite a while. But what happens then is it took me having to interact with people. It took that away. I didn't have to interact with people on a daily basis because we weren't allowed to.
Yeah.
So actually, it's true. So actually coming back into the world was really hard. We all hate change, I think. Well, I say that. I think change is the big thing, and that's the big trigger for anxiety for me when there's a big change, and that's what lockdown really highlighted, is one massive change into another boom like that. But then also it highlighted the fact that things can change at any point in the modern world as well. And we're constantly in a state of flux. And for a mind that wants to be organized and move in a singular direction, that's really hard.
So tell me what actually led you then to the diagnosis at that point. In terms of, you mentioned that you said you had signposted that way. Sort of, was there somebody or a professional organization that helped you?
I was going through another round of CBT. And every time I did CBT, I felt a little bit worse than better. But one of the upshots of the CBT with the therapist was, everything that you're talking about at the moment, and this is a joint realization, maybe you should do a test. Maybe you should look at doing, just even an online one. And I thought, you know what? People have anecdotally mentioned to me, oh, you're clearly on the spectrum. Thing is, and I thought, I'll just go and do it. And I think I scored like 26 or 27 out of 30 on this test. It was like, okay, I'm depressed, bordering on suicidal. I can't make sense of anything anymore. And I look at this and, it really, I really ought to do something with it this time. So I found a charity on Instagram and just typed in, and they were able to point me in the right direction and help me and get the help I need, everything I needed was provided for. And
how did you feel about that? That's taking that step. Did you want to get that diagnosis? Were you worried about getting that diagnosis, or how were you? What were your thoughts going into that?
On desperation. I was desperate. I can't go on. I can't go on like this anymore. The crippling anxiety, the social anxiety, the everything. I was self-medicating in ways that I shouldn't have been to cope with things as well. we just to get me in a room where where I felt like I was part of the room. I was resorting to self-medicating, which in turn was making the anxiety worse. And and there's another. It's just a constant sort of like cycles, and so it was like I need to do something. I need to do something as for me, primarily, but also for the people around me that care, because it got to it's kind of a destructive frame of mind, I guess. If I'm thinking this through now with you, I'm actually trying to cogitate it myself, but I knew I had to do something before it was too late.
And when you say before it was too late, what do you mean? Do you think were you suicidal at that point? Were you
I was
having thoughts of suicide?
I was bordering on it. It was becoming more and more. I was fantasizing about it more. And I don't think I don't think I was ever a candidate for actual suicide. Well, I mean, I don't know how far I got to where I got and got help. So I don't know how much further I could have gone. But it was really, it was tough, really, really tough.
So what came next? Obviously, that's a dark place you were in, and the charity was there to help you. And what came next?
What comes next is a gradual the gradual journey, the relearning me, the acceptance of me, and who I am, what my boundaries, learning my boundaries, learning what I can give and what I can't. It was relearning me with a new mindset, with new information.
Did it take a weight off your shoulders at all in terms of knowing I am autistic? This is who I am. Did that almost in a way, having that recognition and that diagnosis, did that kind of lift a pressure off you in any way?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I mean, I wouldn't say initially it was like I mentioned, grief earlier. You feel. And I don't want to. I don't ever take the word grief lightly. And for obviously, I'm grieving something that other people. How can I put it? I felt the anger, felt the sadness, I felt the frustration. It was, but the overarching feeling in the end is relief, because my world is more real. It's more real, more relatable to me. And
what was the reaction from your family and friends and peers?
It's like, what? Sorry, I couldn't move from place. It was something I had to explain very, very carefully. A bunch of people, they said, what, like you didn't know already? The usual. It's like, it's funny, it's like everyone knows who's the alcoholic, but no one ever tells them in the ring. Yeah, I'm an alcoholic. What, you didn't know? No. So there was a whole load of people. They said, yeah, we knew already. I mean, God, tell me something new. And then my parents are like, obviously, I love them dearly, but it was hard for them to understand, I guess. But I just explained it in a way that I could. And it is really interesting. This is the other thing, because I didn't realize that my emotional connection with them was also it's a lot better now. Actually, the way I feel and the way I can be with them, I think it's a lot better, because before I was completely emotionally stunted. It's like there's just a complete lockdown.
Would you have used that masking with your parents and your family as well?
Oh God, yeah. Oh God, yeah. I was so awkward in situations. In fact, I used to find it really, really hard going home. I moved to London quite a long time ago from Manchester. They're all still up there. I used to find it super, super hard to go home. The anxiety levels on my way home was so high, it kept me away from home for such a long time. And I never really, unwound all of that, or just got to grips with what that was. But there were, a whole number of reasons. And I think the having to mask quite often as well, when I was so burnt out, by the time I got home, I collapsed. It's almost like there is a safe space at home, and then I couldn't even hardly talk. They say autistic burnout, and I actually was describing my burnout as this before I'd read it. It's like the computer has to shut down, and then you have to reboot. And in order to that process is that everything slumps, your mind, the whole lot. And again, I know I'm going up at a tangent. Yeah, you have to pull me back online now.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay.
I'm literally just, sometimes I say that and I actually do.
No worries. Going back to like being with friends and family and stuff. Have you since your diagnosis? Have you felt able to sort of be your true self more? And how have they taken to that?
I would say it's a work in progress.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's a work in progress because I truly believe that I am certainly on the edge of the generation that look at mental health differently. In honesty, there's a stoicism in the older generations that I massively respect. The post World War II, the baby boomers, all of this.
Mm-hmm.
I massively respect it, but I think it makes it very difficult to engage directly about what my mental health issues might be. So that's my honest truth. But then there are people that are very open to that as well. So yeah.
I imagine that's different people are going to react to different ways. I imagine, of course. Tell me a little bit about the sort of the mission you're on now, in terms of this is a big journey you've been on personally, but you've kind of taken it now to the wider industry and trying to look at how you can potentially support or at least recognise the challenges that others face in the music industry. Tell me a little bit about that, and tell me a little bit about your work in that area.
Okay, so I obviously struggled quite a lot to get to the point that I'm at now, where is a point of, it's not perfection, but it's more equilibrium. In order to do that, actually, I've also had to, I'm going on my sober journey now as well. Honestly, I've gone cold turkey in so many different ways, but all of this is it's certainly freed up time for me to think about. Now I'm at this point in my career, what I can actually do to put something back in. I know I've had difficulty working in certain environments, and I know certain environments have had difficulty working properly with me in them. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to take accountability on both sides here, right? But that's because the neurotypical world isn't fully set up for a neurodivergent mind. So with that in mind, I also know there's many, many musicians earlier on in their careers, or wherever they are in their careers, that are struggling. They've taken music as their special focus, and they are. I know so many musicians that I identify as, or certainly show signs of being ASD or ADHD, or both, which is equally possible. So I've managed to, and this is with the help of, again, the charity that really helped me out, the LA London Autistic Charity Group. We've put together a survey with the University of Bedfordshire. It's going to be the first sort of its type. It's a clinical survey. I'd say a clinical survey. It's got a full research department on it. And what we're going to do, we want to find out the positives and the negatives and the difficulties and just anything. We want people's stories. We want to know about what they've struggled with. We want to know about everything to do with their music, so that we can put all that information together and take it to the wider music community with a view to putting in a set of guidelines, almost a toolkit, if you will, to help us all work together. And I mentioned it earlier, so we're quite early on that journey. The survey's already out. I'm promoting it at the moment, and we've got some great support from industry bodies, BAPM, who work in mental health in the music industry. The PRS are a collection agency within the collection agency for the music industry. We've got law firms. I talk regularly with Simpkins Law Firm, one of the big media and entertainment law firms. We're all getting together to kind of push this forward because it's a massive conversation that's opened up. And I'm using, my experience and hopefully my voice to kind of amplify this message and get the message across to the music industry just to help.
As I said, I don't know a great deal about the music industry. It's not a world I'm familiar with, but as someone who is and has worked in it for as long as you have, do you feel that it has some issues around inclusivity when it comes to the neurodivergent community, or is it something that you just think it just hasn't addressed?
It's not even just inclusivity; it's protection as well. I mean, you're 9 times more likely to become addicted to substances if you've tried them as an autistic or on the ADHD spectrum. So, and that's just that's been data gathered from a study. I think it was Cambridge. I think, please don't quote me. The music industry into that, and deadlines and touring and this and that. And there are there are actually charities within the music industry that are helping musicians that are really struggling with addiction as well. It's one of those industries. I don't know how to say it in a polite way, but it's slightly it doesn't encourage the use, but it doesn't discourage either. It's been glamorized somewhat along the way. We all know. So it's about that as well, really.
And what's your hopes ultimately for the survey and the results that come from it? You mentioned a set of guidelines, but presumably as well, do you sort of dream of a time when neurodivergent people can see, and young people in particular can see, the music industry as a career that is welcoming to them?
Yeah, absolutely. But also, I think it's about building up a community as well within the industry where there's support and there's a support network. Because currently that doesn't exist specifically. There is no specific place to go to. I know that because I couldn't find it and I had to search outside of it. Now, I think ideally, I'd like to see a place where that is possible. I'd like to see a time where there is a community we can go to. I'd love to be a part of that if it happens, or at least support it.
Well, I was going to say, and what about for you personally, being involved in a project like that and being a champion for others and being a voice as well yourself? How does that make you feel? I'm assuming you're very proud of that. You should be proud of that.
I've had moments like when we did all this work to get the survey together, and we had all these Zoom calls, and then when the thing actually happened, what's been most wonderful is the feedback from people around me. Actually, it's like you don't realize whether something you're doing like this has value until it's out in the world. It's like, well, there is a bit of a, well, let's build it and see if they come kind of thing. But I even have people like, it's even people ringing me today, like someone rang me today just to say, do you know what? I have no reason to call you other than to say I'm really proud of what you're doing, and I just wanted to thank you for doing it. It's coming from all directions. So this isn't. I'm very grateful for people's feedback. I'm very grateful for the response. If there is anything, even if it's just the conversation opens up a bit wider, and we do create a community, that's something for me, because it's such a fragmented community at the moment, and in life, everything's so fragmented. We're all in these little pockets of social media bubble. Just to be able to come together and actually talk on the level is great. I
think that's definitely.
I feel proud.
You should. You're absolutely right. You should. You definitely should. What about you personally in terms of your own journey? You said you've still got a little way to go. You feel what's next for you on your personal journey with autism, and sort of personally and professionally?
Oh, it's a big question. What's next for me? I've had a very bad month mentally. I'll level with you. August and September were really quite bad and very anxious. This isn't. So honestly, it's to keep moving forward and to manage and to learn to manage better, and to learn to manage better around those that I love as well. So it is. It's very much a work in progress. There's no cure. That's the other thing. It's just you've got to put the work in. So my journey, it's ongoing. You said was it my hopes? Did you say? Or
Yeah, just if you were to look 5 years down the line, where do you see or where do you hope to see yourself?
5 years down the line. Well, honestly, because there are a number of projects happening at the moment, but I'd love to be in a point where I am at the moment. I'm actually, say for instance, looking at doing a qualification in counselling of some description. So that's part of it. Still create music. I'll always be creating music. Sometimes I felt like I've fallen out of love with it and I've moved away, and then I've always been drawn back in. Creating music, helping people, and creating things that, whatever they are, that bring me pride and that mean something.
Well, I think you're certainly on the right head.
Yeah,
you're definitely heading in the right direction with the survey and everything.
Thank you.
So I wish you all the very best of luck. Final question for you: What would your advice be to men who might be listening to this, who maybe haven't reached that point of diagnosis yet themselves, but maybe recognizing from your words and what you've talked through today so honestly and openly, it may recognize some of that in themselves? What would your advice be to those guys?
My advice, and this is just my advice, obviously, try and find the right help that there are. I mean, I reached out to that if you can look at that there are help numbers within the local council. I even reached out to my local council, and I managed to get a certain type of therapy at really, really difficult times. But I would say it is the question, and this is the thing, I know I'm not really making much sense, but it's such a sensitive. Finding the right help is key.
Where would someone start? Where would you suggest they start?
I mean, you could start with the National Autistic Society. You could even honestly, anyone struggling, reach out to me, and I can help you find the right place wherever you are in the country. You can get me on my Instagram and just reach out. That's absolutely fine. But this is a really difficult question.
Sorry to end on a difficult question.
No. I think it's a fair question. I think I should be able to answer this, because it really does come to going to your doctor, to reaching out to helplines, to reaching out to anyone that can offer advice. But definitely the people that I found in London, they were the ones that changed it all for me. So yeah, I was very fortunate, and this actually. Me not being able to answer this question also throws up into the air, where is the support? Because this is another problem that I found. Mm-hmm. There isn't the support. So this is, and I'm really, so please, anyone, feel free to reach out to me and I'll help you find it. And I'll even just be an ear to listen to.
Thank you very much for that offer. I'll make sure that we put all the links to, on the show notes, and put the links to your Instagram and everything. Also put the links to the survey as well, and do whatever we can to help spread the word. So,
absolutely.
Andrew, thank you so much for your time today. I really, really appreciate it. It's been absolutely fascinating, and
thank you.
When listening, take something from it. So, thank you for your time. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your time at the Ground Show, whatever you get up to.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to go celeb hunting now.
Nice. All right. Take care.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
Okay.
See you. That's it for another episode. Thanks to Andrew Kingslow for being so open about his experiences and challenges. If you're in the music industry and would like to take part in Andrew's groundbreaking survey, you'll find a link to it in the show notes. And if you'd like to listen to John Legend's latest album, well, you can find that pretty much everywhere. Don't forget, you can keep the conversation going by answering our episode question. And for this episode, we'd like to know, has music helped your mental health? You can answer it on the Spotify episode page, the link to which can be found in the episode notes or through the Linktree site in the show profile. You can also, of course, interact with the show by sending us a voice message. We're always really keen to hear what you think of our guests and the subjects we're discussing. So tell us whether you can relate to Andrew's story and how your own autism has impacted your life. You can also tell us your ideas for topics and things you'd like us to cover. Again, just head on over to the episode notes or to the Linktree site for more details and the links to do so. And finally, if you've enjoyed the show, please do leave us a review and subscribe on whatever platform you usually get your podcasts. In the meantime though, look after yourselves and I'll see you soon. Take care.